The prismatic spire hung like a massive crystal shard against the backdrop of the Nexus Void, a region of space where reality bent and shimmered at the edges of perception. Inside its central chamber, the Interstellar Governance Council assembled, a collection of the most advanced civilizations in the known universe, each representative a living testament to millennia of evolutionary refinement. Orcs stood at the central projection point, their multi-layered sensory organs shifting in a pattern that translated to extreme concentration among their species. 3 centuries of xenanthropological research had led to this moment, a comprehensive assessment of humanity that would determine the species' fate. The holographic display came to life, not with the clinical precision of a typical research presentation, but with a haunting dynamism that seemed to pulse with an almost living energy. Images of Earth flickered, war zones, technological centers, natural disasters, moments of profound human achievement, each scene carefully selected to build a comprehensive psychological profile. Species classification. Homo sapiens, Orcs began, their vocalization translated into multiple linguistic matrices for the Council's diverse members. Emerging technological civilization. Threat potential. Extreme. The first layer of the presentation focused on humanity's destructive capabilities. Clips of nuclear weapons, environmental devastation, and centuries of conflict played out in rapid succession. To the alien observers, it was a damning indictment, a species that seemed perpetually on the brink of self-annihilation. But beneath the surface of Orcs' presentation lurked something more, a personal obsession that had consumed their entire research career. Humanity was an anomaly, a species that defied every predictive model the Council had ever developed. A secondary projection materialized, a holographic representation of an ancient artifact recovered centuries ago. Etched into its crystalline surface was a prophecy so cryptic that most scholars had dismissed it as meaningless, but Orcs had dedicated decades to its study. The artifact spoke of a species of fractured potential, a civilization that would emerge from the crucible of internal conflict to become either the salvation or destruction of galactic civilization. Most of the Council had laughed when Orcs had first presented this research. Now they listened with growing unease. Consider their technological trajectory, Orcs continued, zooming into a timeline of human innovation. The projection showed an almost exponential curve of development, from simple stone tools to quantum computing in a mere few thousand years. What should have been a slow, methodical progression was instead a chaotic explosion of innovation. The most disturbing element was human adaptability. Where other emerging species showed linear technological development, humans displayed a terrifying capacity for rapid, unpredictable advancement. A war would break out, and suddenly new technologies would emerge. An environmental challenge would arise, and human ingenuity would find solutions that defied existing scientific understanding. Ambassador Kelthor of the Crystalline Confederacy leaned forward, multiple eyes narrowing. Your recommendation? The question hung in the air, weighted with potential galactic consequences. Orcs' response was immediate and unequivocal. Strict quarantine. Potential preemptive neutralization. Humanity represents an uncontrolled variable that could destabilize the current galactic order. But even as the words were spoken, a subtle tremor passed through Orcs' sensory organs, a biological tell that suggested something deeper. This was not just a scientific recommendation. This was personal. Hidden in the presentation's background, almost imperceptible, was a series of additional data points, moments of human cooperation, scientific breakthroughs, acts of profound compassion, instances of collective problem-solving that suggested something more complex than the narrative of destruction. The Council members shifted uncomfortably. The recommendation was clear, but something about humanity refused to be easily categorized. Something about this species suggested a potential that existed beyond their current understanding. As the presentation concluded, the ancient artifact's projection lingered for just a moment. A silent warning from a long-dead civilization. The species of fractured potential was about to make its mark on galactic history. Little did the Council know, their fatal miscalculation was already in motion. The arrival of the alien fleet transformed Earth's orbital space into a canvas of technological might. Ambassador Catel's command vessel, the Luminous Collective's most advanced diplomatic ship, was a crystalline monstrosity that defied human understanding of engineering. Its surface shifted and shimmered, a living technology that could reconfigure itself instantaneously. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in the United Earth Response Center, a facility buried deep beneath the Andes Mountains. Her team represented humanity's most unlikely diplomatic weapon, a group of researchers, linguists, psychologists, and strategic thinkers who had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. The initial transmission arrived with mathematical precision, a communication so perfectly structured it seemed more like a computational algorithm than a message of first contact. Transmission Protocol Alpha 09. Species Homo sapiens DIRECTIV. Immediate global surrender. Terms of COMPI and C. Total cessation of independent technological development. Subbibian to interstellar GOVERNA and COLECTIV. Immediate planetary demilitarization. Consequence of Inan. COMPI. Total planetary neutralization. Most species would have collapsed under the weight of such a message. The alien communication was designed to induce immediate psychological submission, a technique that had worked countless times across the galaxy. But humanity was different. They think this is a negotiation, Elena muttered, a slight smile crossing her face. Her team looked up, understanding the layers of meaning in her statement. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a quantum linguist, began running the transmission through a series of computational filters. It's not just a message, he said. It's a psychological weapon. Look at the grammatical structure. It's designed to trigger submission responses hard-coded into most sentient species' communication patterns. The human response team began their counter-strategy. It wasn't about defiance or aggression. It was about demonstrating something the aliens could never anticipate, a form of diplomatic jiu-jitsu that would turn their own communication against them. Their response came not from a single leader, but as a carefully orchestrated global communication. Simultaneous broadcasts went out from every continent, each with a subtle variation that, when combined, created a complex communicative tapestry. The United Nations Secretary-General spoke from New York, her message a blend of diplomatic caution and subtle defiance. A leading physicist in CERN delivered a technical dissertation that subtly revealed humanity's scientific capabilities. Indigenous leaders from various continents presented cultural perspectives that challenged the very notion of surrender. But the true masterstroke was embedded in the communication itself. Dr. Tanaka had constructed the response as a linguistic puzzle, a communication that could be decoded multiple ways, each interpretation revealing a different facet of human complexity. Ambassador Catel's translation matrices began to falter. The communication didn't just reject the ultimatum, it deconstructed the very concept of ultimatums. They're not responding, Tal told their senior advisors. They're rewriting the rules of communication. In the Luminous Collective's command ship, confusion spread. Their predictive models, which had worked flawlessly for millennia, began to generate nonsensical outcomes. Humanity was creating a diplomatic language that existed between the lines of traditional communication. Earth's response revealed something terrifying to the aliens. This was not a species that could be easily categorized or controlled. They were witnessing a form of collective intelligence that transcended individual leadership, a global consciousness that could act with both incredible unity and remarkable individual variation. Dr. Rodriguez watched the alien fleet's subtle configuration changes, signs of their growing uncertainty. They expected a binary response, she explained to her team. Submission or destruction. We've just introduced a third option they can't comprehend. The diplomatic exchange became a complex dance, with humanity revealing just enough of their potential to create maximum uncertainty. Technical capabilities were hinted at. Cultural depth was demonstrated. A profound understanding of communication as a multidimensional tool was put on display. What was supposed to be a straightforward subjugation had transformed into the most complex first contact scenario in galactic history. And it was only the beginning. The moment the alien transmission arrived, a global network of human researchers began the most ambitious technological effort in the planet's history. What the aliens saw as a simple act of intimidation became the catalyst for a transformative moment in human development. Dr. Akira Nakamura's research facility in the Hokkaido Advanced Technology Complex was ground zero for the most critical reverse engineering project humanity had ever attempted. A consortium of the world's top research institutions, tech companies, and independent hackers had formed an unprecedented collaborative network. It's not about copying their technology, Nakamura explained to his team, a diverse group of researchers from 18 different countries. It's about understanding the fundamental principles that make their technology work. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A group of graduate students working through an open-source platform discovered a fundamental quantum communication weakness in the alien transmission. What seemed like a secure communication network had a subtle architectural flaw, a microscopic vulnerability that most species would have overlooked. In Beijing, a team of material scientists began analyzing the spectral composition of the alien fleet's outer hull. Within hours, they were generating computational models that could theoretically replicate, and potentially exploit, the ship's adaptive metamaterial structure. The truly revolutionary aspect wasn't just the speed of adaptation, but the distributed nature of the research. Unlike most alien civilizations with centralized research models, humanity's approach was a living, breathing ecosystem of innovation. Every global time zone contributed. University labs, corporate research centers, and independent researchers formed a network that could process information faster than any centralized system. A teenager in Lagos discovered a potential quantum encryption bypass. A research team in Sao Paulo developed a theoretical framework for understanding the aliens' energy transmission systems. A collective of robotics engineers in Seoul began designing adaptive drone technologies based on preliminary alien tech analysis. The Luminous Collective's lead researcher, secondary analyst Fornax, watched in growing horror as their most advanced systems began to show signs of vulnerability. Their technology had remained essentially unchanged for centuries, a testament to its perceived perfection. Humanity was doing something unprecedented, not just studying the technology, but fundamentally reimagining its potential. They're not just reverse engineering, Fornax reported to the Council. They're performing a kind of technological evolution that our systems cannot predict. Within 72 hours of first contact, human researchers had generated preliminary models of alien quantum communication networks that exceeded the aliens' own understanding. It wasn't just about copying. It was about reimagining. Dr. Nakamura's team discovered something truly shocking. The alien technological systems, while advanced, operated on a fundamentally rigid architectural principle. They were designed for efficiency, but had sacrificed adaptability. Human technology, by contrast, had evolved through constant challenge and improvisation. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A neural network developed by a distributed team of AI researchers began generating technological innovation models that completely defied the aliens' computational predictions. It wasn't just an incremental improvement. It was a fundamental reimagining of technological development. The most critical moment came when Dr. Elena Rodriguez's diplomatic team merged with the technological research group. They realized that technological adaptation was itself a form of communication, a language the aliens had never encountered. They see technology as a fixed system, Rodriguez explained during a global briefing. We see it as a living, evolving organism. The Global Research Network began producing prototype technologies that combined elements of captured alien systems with human innovation. Quantum communication devices that could adapt in real time. Adaptive materials that could reconfigure themselves based on environmental challenges. energy transmission systems that didn't just transfer power, but could dynamically negotiate its use. What the luminous collective had intended as a show of technological superiority had become humanity's greatest opportunity. Every moment of observation, every transmitted signal, became a chance for human researchers to understand and ultimately transcend the aliens' technological paradigm. The technological race had begun, and humanity was just getting started. Vornax's final report to the Interstellar Governance Council was chilling in its simplicity. They are not just learning. They are transforming. The adaptive response protocol was not a weapon. It was a living, breathing system of human complexity that defied every computational model the luminous collective had ever developed. Dr. Marcus Chen leaned back in the command center of the Global Psychological Dynamics Institute, a facility that looked more like an avant-garde art installation than a military research center. Banks of holographic displays flickered with streams of data, cultural information, and psychological profiles that formed an intricate web of human potential. They're looking for patterns, Chen explained to his team. But humans don't have patterns. We have possibilities. The first stage of psychological warfare was counterintuitive. Instead of presenting a unified front, humanity deliberately showed its internal complexity. News broadcasts from different countries presented subtly different narratives. Social media exploded with a cacophony of perspectives that would drive any computational analysis system into complete breakdown. The alien surveillance systems, designed to extract clear strategic information, instead found themselves drowning in a sea of human contradiction. A protest in New York, a scientific breakthrough in Mumbai, a cultural festival in Sao Paulo, the philosophical debate in Cairo. Each transmission was a puzzle piece that refused to fit into any predictable framework. Dr. Arya Patel, a lead researcher in mimetic communication, had developed a series of communication protocols that were less about sending a message and more about creating cognitive dissonance. Our greatest weapon, she told Chen, is our ability to simultaneously believe multiple contradictory things. The aliens had encountered species that used disinformation before, but humanity's approach was fundamentally different. This wasn't about creating false narratives. It was about presenting such a complex version of reality that traditional analysis became impossible. In the luminous collective's command ship, analyst Vornax watched in growing frustration. Their most advanced predictive algorithms began to generate increasingly nonsensical outcomes. Where other species would show clear strategic alignments, humans presented a networked consciousness that could shift instantaneously. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A group of performance artists, hackers, and cultural theorists began developing what they called distributed psychological warfare. They created a global network of communication that was part art, part strategy, part pure human improvisation. Social media campaigns merged with academic research. Memes became sophisticated communication tools. Cultural references became a form of coded language that the aliens could not begin to comprehend. Every transmission was a multi-layered communication that could be read in dozens of different ways. The most brilliant stroke came when human researchers began to deliberately leak seemingly contradictory information about their technological and military capabilities. One transmission would suggest total vulnerability. Another would hint at capabilities far beyond the aliens' understanding. The cumulative effect was psychological destabilization on an unprecedented scale. We're not hiding, Dr. Chen explained during a closed briefing. We're presenting such a complex version of ourselves that traditional analysis becomes impossible. Military strategists developed what they called quantum communication tactics, communication strategies that existed in a state of simultaneous potential. A message could be both a threat and a peace offering. A technological demonstration could be both a display of weakness and of incredible strength. The alien surveillance systems began to malfunction. Their computational models, which had worked flawlessly for millennia, started to generate increasingly erratic results. The human communication network was a living organism that could not be easily categorized or understood. Vornax's final report to the Interstellar Governance Council was a masterpiece of mounting frustration. They are not a species. They are a process of becoming. The most terrifying element was the deliberate nature of the chaos. This wasn't random. This was a calculated approach to psychological engagement that transformed conflict into a form of complex communication. Humanity was not just resisting. They were rewriting the very rules of engagement. And they were just getting started. The Luminous Collective's invasion fleet approached Earth with calculated precision, a mathematical symphony of destruction that had broken the resistance of 1,000 civilizations before. Ambassador Cattell watched the holographic display, expecting the same predictable capitulation they had witnessed countless times. They were catastrophically wrong. The first wave of alien attacks came precisely as their strategic models predicted. Massive energy weapons that could vaporize entire city blocks powered up. Quantum-entangled assault platforms prepared to neutralize any potential human resistance. It was a display of technological superiority that had never failed in millennia of galactic subjugation. But humanity had been preparing. Not just militarily, but with a multi-dimensional strategy that defied every known principle of conflict. In the distributed command centers spread across the globe, Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team activated the Adaptive Defense Matrix, a system that was less a traditional military response and more a living, breathing organism of technological and strategic improvisation. The first alien energy weapon discharge met something unprecedented. Instead of a simple defensive shield, the human response was a dynamic, reconfiguring system that did something impossible. It began to not just absorb the alien weapon's energy, but to understand and then repurpose it. A network of quantum-linked drones, developed through a global collaborative effort that combined contributions from research labs, tech companies, and even amateur engineers, began to swarm around the alien assault platforms. These were not traditional military drones. They were adaptive learning systems that could reconfigure themselves in real time. Dr. Akira Nakamura's team had developed a breakthrough that the aliens could not comprehend. Each drone was part of a collective intelligence, communicating and adapting faster than any centralized command structure could possibly respond. Where the alien systems were perfectly efficient, the human systems were beautifully chaotic. The most shocking moment came when the human defensive systems began to use the aliens' own communication and navigation frequencies against them. It wasn't just electronic warfare, it was a complete reimagining of technological engagement. In the Luminous Collective's command ship, Vornax watched in growing horror. Their invasion models, which had been perfected over thousands of years, began to generate completely nonsensical outcomes. The human response was not just resistance, it was a form of technological jujitsu that turned the aliens' own strengths into vulnerabilities. A squad of human-controlled drones infiltrated an alien assault platform. But infiltration was too simple a word. They didn't just enter the system. They began to understand it, to communicate with it, to transform it from the inside. The global human response was a masterpiece of distributed intelligence. Research teams in Tokyo were sending computational models to defense systems in Brazil. Engineers in Cape Town were reconfiguring drone swarm tactics developed by a collective of programmers in New Delhi. It was a global immune system responding to an external threat. Ambassador Cattell realized something terrifying. They were not fighting a military. They were engaging with a living, adaptive organism that happened to be planetary in scale. The turning point came not from a single decisive battle, but from a series of impossible adaptations. Human systems were learning and transforming faster than the aliens could compute. Every alien attack was immediately analyzed, understood, and transformed into a potential advantage. Vornax's communication to the Interstellar Governance Council became increasingly frantic. They are not defending, the report read. They are evolving. The invasion that was supposed to take hours was now in its third day, with the aliens making progressively less effective attacks. Human systems were not just resisting, they were growing stronger with each engagement. In the distributed command centers, Dr. Rodriguez allowed herself a slight smile. "They thought we were a single organism," she said to her team. "We're showing them we're an entire ecosystem." The battle for Earth had become something far more profound than a military conflict. It was a demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence, a reminder that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to adapt, to learn, to transform. And humanity was just getting started. The Interstellar Governance Council convened in a state of unprecedented chaos. The massive crystalline chamber of the prismatic spire, which had remained unchanged for thousands of years, now pulsed with discordant energy. Holographic representations of member species flickered with raw, unfiltered emotion, something rarely seen in millennia of galactic diplomacy. Orcs stood at the center of the maelstrom, their multi-layered sensory organs processing the conflicting inputs. The human situation had become more than a diplomatic challenge. It was a fundamental threat to the Council's entire conceptual framework of galactic civilization. "Extermination," growled Krelnax of the Adamantine Concordance, "is the only rational response." Ambassador Tissar of the Quantum Collective disagreed. "They are unprecedented. Destruction would be a catastrophic loss of potential." The debate raged across multiple dimensional communication layers. Some council members wanted immediate and total destruction of Earth. Others saw humanity as a potential resource, a species so unpredictable that it might revolutionize galactic understanding. Zarix's research became the focal point of the debate. The prophecy discovered decades ago, the one most had dismissed, now seemed horrifyingly relevant. A species of fractured potential that could either save or destroy galactic civilization. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was presenting a response that was equally complex. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led a diplomatic initiative that was less about traditional negotiation and more about redefining the entire concept of interstellar relations. The human response was simultaneously a defense, a communication, and a philosophical challenge to the existing galactic order. A distributed network of human researchers, diplomats, and cultural experts began sending out multi-layered communications. These were not simple messages, but complex packages of information that combined scientific data, cultural context, philosophical insights, and strategic communication. The most brilliant stroke was how humans framed their own potential. They didn't present themselves as victims or conquerors. They presented themselves as a work in progress, a species actively becoming something new. In the council chambers, Zarix presented a comprehensive analysis that left even the most hardened council members stunned. Humanity's response to the invasion was not just a military defense. It was a complete reimagining of conflict, communication, and potential. "They are not fighting," Zarix explained. "They are evolving in real time." The human communications revealed something terrifying to the Council. Every attack had been not just defended against, but transformed into an opportunity for understanding and growth. Their technological systems were learning faster than any known species in galactic history. Ambassador K'tal, who had led the initial invasion, now presented a report that was part confession, part warning. The human response had completely dismantled every established principle of galactic conflict. They had turned invasion into a form of communication. The Council fractured into multiple factions. The preservation axis argued for careful study of humanity. They saw a species with potential beyond current understanding. The neutralization coalition demanded immediate and total destruction. A new faction, which would later be called the Potential Collective, began to emerge. They saw humanity as a potential solution to stagnation that had gripped galactic civilization for millennia. Zarix's final recommendation was a masterpiece of diplomatic complexity. "We are not dealing with a species. We are witnessing the emergence of a new form of civilization." The most shocking element was humanity's own response. They weren't demanding submission or offering surrender. They were inviting dialogue, a form of communication that was simultaneously an invitation, a challenge, and a philosophical exploration. Dr. Rodriguez's message to the Council became legendary, We are not asking to join your civilization. We are offering to help reimagine what civilization could be. The Interstellar Governance Council had never encountered a species that could turn conflict into a form of collaborative evolution. Humanity was rewriting the rules of galactic engagement, not through force, but through an unprecedented form of adaptive intelligence. And they were just beginning to understand their own potential. The moment of true understanding came not through military triumph or diplomatic negotiation, but through an exchange of cultural and scientific knowledge that would reshape galactic civilization's fundamental understanding of intelligent life. Dr. Zara Okonkwo, a quantum anthropologist from the Global Cultural Dynamics Institute, had been preparing for this moment her entire career. The alien data streams that had been captured during the conflict were more than just technological information. They were a complex tapestry of galactic history, cultural development, and evolutionary potential. What emerged was a shocking revelation. Humanity's seeming destructiveness was actually the most sophisticated adaptive mechanism ever encountered in galactic history. The ancient conflicts that the Interstellar Governance Council had viewed as weaknesses, world wars, environmental challenges, technological growing pains, were actually a crucible of evolutionary adaptation, unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Where other species had found stability through technological stagnation, humans had developed a civilization built on constant reinvention. Zar-X, the alien xenoanthropologist who had first studied humanity, found themselves at the center of the most profound scientific discovery in millennia. The prophecy discovered decades ago wasn't just a historical curiosity. It was a literal description of human potential. Their wars were not just conflicts, Zar-X explained to the stunned potential collective. They were accelerated evolutionary mechanisms. The data revealed a species that had transformed every challenge into an opportunity for growth. Environmental destruction had led to unprecedented ecological innovation. Technological limitations had driven explosive creativity. Social conflicts had generated complex systems of empathy and understanding. Each human cultural system was a living laboratory of adaptation. The global response to the alien invasion was just the most recent manifestation of a fundamental characteristic that defied all previous galactic understanding of intelligent life. Dr. Elena Rodriguez led a comprehensive cultural exchange that was more than just a diplomatic mission. It was a fundamental reimagining of interspecies communication. Human researchers didn't just share information. They invited collaborative understanding. The most shocking revelations came from unexpected sources. A team of artists, philosophers, and scientists demonstrated how human creativity was not a side effect of intelligence, but a fundamental survival mechanism. Their ability to imagine impossible scenarios was itself a form of evolutionary adaptation. Archaeological and historical data showed something unprecedented. Where other species had found stability through rigid social structures, humans had developed a civilization that thrived on change. Their greatest strength was their ability to continuously reimagine themselves. The luminous collective's most advanced computational systems struggled to process the implications. Humanity was not a species in the traditional sense. It was a dynamic process of becoming. Cultural exchanges revealed layers of complexity that defied traditional understanding. Human art was not just aesthetic expression. It was a form of collective problem-solving. Their music was a mathematical exploration of emotional complexity. Their scientific approach was fundamentally different from any known galactic civilization. They don't just solve problems, one alien researcher noted, they transform the very nature of problem-solving. The most profound moment came when human researchers demonstrated how their most challenging historical moments had been transformed into mechanisms of collective growth. Conflicts that would have destroyed other species had become opportunities for fundamental reimagination. Zar-X's comprehensive report to the potential collective became a landmark document in galactic anthropological research. Humanity is not a species. It is a continuous process of transformation. Their apparent chaos is the most sophisticated adaptive mechanism ever encountered. They do not merely survive, They evolve in real time, turning every challenge into an opportunity for fundamental reimagination. The revelation went beyond scientific understanding. It was a fundamental challenge to every existing concept of intelligent life in the galaxy. Humanity had not just survived, they had demonstrated a form of intelligence that was simultaneously destructive and creative, rigid and fluid, individual and collective. They were not just a civilization. They were a living, breathing demonstration of potential itself. And they were just beginning to understand their own capabilities. The transformation of galactic civilization began not with a grand declaration, but with a subtle shift in understanding that rippled across thousands of star systems. In the reconstructed chambers of the Interstellar Governance Council, Zarek stood before a gathering of species that looked nothing like the rigid collective of months before. The prophecy that had once been dismissed was now understood as a fundamental roadmap to galactic evolution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez represented humanity, not as a conqueror, not as a subordinate, but as something entirely new, a collaborative partner in galactic development. The first true diplomatic summit was nothing like anyone had anticipated. Instead of traditional negotiations, it became a living, breathing exchange of potential. Human representatives didn't just bring technological or cultural information. They brought a fundamental approach to existence that challenged every established galactic paradigm. A team of human researchers, artists, philosophers, and scientists demonstrated something revolutionary. Their presentation was not a linear narrative, but a multidimensional exploration of possibility. Where other species would provide a structured report, humans created an immersive experience that was simultaneously a scientific presentation, an artistic performance, and a philosophical inquiry. The Quantum Collective's lead researcher described it best. They are not sharing information. They are inviting us to reimagine what information can be. Humanity's contribution to galactic civilization became something far more profound than technological exchange. They introduced a concept of development that was fluid, adaptive, and fundamentally collaborative. Where previous galactic interactions had been transactional, humans proposed a model of mutual transformation. The most radical element was how humans approached the very concept of civilization. They didn't see themselves as a finished product, but as a continuous process of becoming. Their approach to interstellar relations was not about establishing dominance or seeking protection, but about creating a dynamic ecosystem of mutual growth. Technological exchanges revealed something unprecedented. Human researchers didn't just share technologies, they shared the process of technological development. Their approach was less about the end product and more about the innovative potential that created it. A consortium of alien species began to study what humans called cultural innovation mechanisms. Their educational systems, their approach to conflict resolution, their artistic expressions, each was a sophisticated adaptive strategy that defied traditional understanding of intelligence. Zarek's comprehensive analysis became a foundational text in galactic anthropological research. The report was less a scientific document and more a philosophical revelation. Humanity represents not a species, but a fundamental approach to existence. They do not merely adapt, they transform the very nature of adaptation. Their potential is not a destination, but a continuous journey of becoming. The economic models of the Luminous Collective were completely rewritten. Humans introduced concepts of value that went beyond resource accumulation, valuing potential, creativity, and collective growth over static achievements. The most profound transformation happened in how different species began to understand themselves. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had offered a new lens through which civilization could be understood. Dr. Rodriguez's final statement to the council became legendary. We are not here to lead or to follow. We are here to collaborate in ways we have not yet imagined. The barriers between species began to dissolve. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for millennia started to transform into dynamic, collaborative networks. Humanity's greatest gift was not their technology or their military potential. It was their ability to see potential where others saw limitation. Zarix reflected on the journey. The fatal miscalculation was never about humanity's potential for destruction. It was about the inability to recognize a fundamentally new approach to existence. The prophecy was fulfilled, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity did not save or destroy galactic civilization. They transformed the very concept of what civilization could be. As the first truly collaborative Galactic Congress began, it was clear that everything had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity was not a species that had arrived. They were a continuous process of becoming.